we had talked about exponential functions, and I told you that Albert Einstein said the greatest invention of all time is something called compound interest. What compound interest means is that when you invest money, you get interest on that money. That's the way for the bank to say, thank you for giving us your money. Here's, well, right now you're getting 0.5% interest, which is nothing. There were times where you would get 7, 8, 9% on your money. If you guys know anything about Series 1 bonds, Series 1 bonds are paying 9% right now. I think the most you could invest is $10,000. You have to hold it. It's like a treasury bond. You have to hold it in the account for 1 year, and you're penalized if you take it out before 5 years. But those are paying something like 9.7% interest because inflation is so high. But I want to show you mathematically why Albert Einstein said that compound interest is the most important invention of all time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a table here in Excel so you can see how the math works. What I'm going to have is I will have age here. I'll put years here. I'll put how much you invest, the interest, and the cumulative interest. So let's say, now all of my students are all different ages. So let's just assume we're starting at 22, all right? Right out of high school. Obviously, we have some older students here. I'm much older than 22 myself, but I'm going to put 22 here, and I'm just going to increase 22 by 1, and I'm going to keep that going until retirement age. We'll call it 65. All right. And years of investing, we'll say at 22, if you will just start there. So we'll have 0. I'll increase that by 1. And what I'm going to do is there's something called a Roth IRA. Did you guys ever hear of a Roth IRA before? So what do we know about a Roth IRA? Not much.
Well,
So
I've heard of it.
So what are
they do like aggressive? They put your money into different stock options or something like that. And that accumulates money.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have George in class is saying that what he knows about a Roth IRA is it's a vehicle to invest money. So a Roth IRA, anyone could invest in that as long as you make less than, I believe, $140,000 a year. There's also a 401k, there's 403bs, there's all different types of investments. The difference is with a 401k, which some of your works might offer you, is that if you invest money there and then you go to take it out when you retire, you're paying taxes on whatever money you take out when you go to pull it out. The benefit with a Roth IRA is you put money in now from your net pay. So after taxes are taken out, let's say you get a paycheck and it's $1,000, all your taxes are paid. If you put that $1,000 in the stock market in a Roth IRA and the $1,000 turns into $5,000, when you go to take it out, you don't pay any taxes on it. That's why it's so good. So your money actually grows year over year without any taxes accumulating. With a 401k, you're actually paying taxes exponentially. So you're still making money, but you're making less than you would if you had a Roth IRA. So let's start with, let's assume the interest rate. Over the last 100 years, the stock market's returned 9.8% every year in interest, or it's grown about 9.8% every year. Last year, it was about 32%. This year, it's not looking so hot. If you've been following stocks, it's been actually going down. So some years it might go up 30%, it might go down 20%. But if you average that out over the last 100 years, it comes out to 9.8%. So when I figure out my personal finances, I use 5% as the interest rate. That's kind of right down the middle. It's nice and conservative. When I'm planning for retirement, I figure 5% is a safe bet. If I have more money, great. If I have less, it's not going to be a whole lot less. So let's say at 22 years old, we're starting with the most money you could put into a Roth IRA is $6,000. So we'll start with $6,000. the amount of interest that we get is going to be $6,000 times the interest rate. So we get $300 in interest. And I'm just going to say cumulative. We would just get 6,000 plus 300. So I'll actually make these a little bit prettier to look at. And center these. All right, so now it's looking a little bit better. The next year, let's say you invest $6,000. And what happens is you're not getting interest on the $6,000 anymore. You're getting interest on the $6,000 and the $6,300 that you invested the year before. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the interest for this is equal to the interest rate times what we had last year and this year. And that comes out to, let me just figure this out real quick here. So if you did that, it would be $6,300 plus the $6,000 plus the $615 in interest. You'd have $12,915. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this going up until we go to retire at 65. So let me just do this here. So one thing that I wanted to show you about this is age. I want to graph age relative to the cumulative returns. And I'm going to draw a graph. And if you see, that red graph looks a lot like an exponential function, right? So this is the cool part. If you would have invested $6,000 every year from when you were 22 years old to when you go to retire at 65, you would have put, let's see what this is, $264,000 in the stock market, right? So if you do $6,000 times 43 years, it comes out to 264. Because of the beauty of compound interest, your $264 that you started with grew to almost $1 million. If you just put $6,000 a year into a mattress or in a closet or whatever, you'd have $264,000. But because you're getting interest off of how much money you put in and the interest on top of that every year, that's why it grows exponentially. This is how people plan for retirement. Now, I don't mean to assume that you guys don't know that, but when I teach this at high school, this is the first time that they're seeing that. Let's say that we delay how much money we are putting in. So let's say that typically what a lot of people do, and obviously it depends on life circumstances. If you have children, if you don't make a lot of money where you can contribute, you know, I'm not assuming any of this stuff. I'm just saying this is how the math works. But let's say what happens is when you're 22, you don't put any money in, or 23, or 24, or 25, or 26. Let's say you start it when you're 27 years old, right? So what you're doing is you're delaying retirement savings by 5 years. That's $30,000, right? You would have put $6,000 in when you're 22 to 27. That's 5 years. $6,000 is $30,000. How much do you think that affects how much you're seeing at retirement. So you're putting $30,000 less in instead of $965,000. It's $718,000. You lost over $200,000 in interest because you delayed saving for retirement for 5 years. The moral of the story is whatever money you could set aside for retirement, it's better to start earlier than later, right? Especially now with the stock market doing what it's doing. On Friday, it dropped 2.5%. It was one of the greatest drops of all time. That would have been a really good opportunity for us, or if you're still saving for retirement, if that's still a ways off, to put money into the stock market at that time, because it's almost like you're buying stocks on sale. But I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just showing you how the math works out. So the bottom line is the earlier you start saving for retirement, the more money you'll accumulate over time.